Southern nights, have you ever felt a southern night? Free as the breeze, not to mention the trees, whistling tunes that you know and love so. Southern nights.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and nobody want to hear it, but it's like this the South got something to say.
Hi, my name is Kevin Blackistone, alongside Dr. Robert Greene II.
Welcome to the award-winning podcast, Our New South, presented by the Levine Museum of the New South in Charlotte, North Carolina.
The Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South.
Follow the show, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and here in Season 3, you can watch our conversations right here on YouTube.
All right, let's get to today's show. Well, Lizz Wright, I got to tell you, the first time I heard you was in 2003. Just after your debut album came out, Salt, and you were at the Newport Jazz Festival on the big stage. And I did not know from that album or from your performance that day that you were so rooted in the South, that you were a Southern girl. That didn't come out until later. So now we know that you were born and raised in Hahira, Georgia, a small town on a 2-acre tract of land. Your father was a minister, Holiness Pentecostal Church, known as your grandfather was known as Big Daddy. You grew your own vegetables and fruits and all of this. So when did you become comfortable with and make the decision to infuse your art with your Southernness?
You know, Kevin, I think my expression of Southernness, at least in comparison to others, is about the quietness of my relationship with nature and my family. I have a very, a quiet, joyful, funny family. We're just very close to the earth, and we love being outside. We love fishing. We love gardening together, and just this kind of quietness, this kind of that's my relationship with the South. Honestly, very reflective and quiet. We're a family of dreamers. We talk to each other about dreams. These are the kinds of things I remember from childhood. My father reading stories. He read stories from a collection called "A People Who Could Fly." James Earl Jones actually reads it as a as a recording, and it's incredible. It's like Black folk tales from slave times. It's horror and romance and comedy. And my dad used to read in these voices, and he also he had Shakespeare's plays. He had a collection of them, and he would just drop in and read them. He was a very, very odd man. So I sang the experience of the South that I lived, just being outdoors, lots of storytelling. In the church, there's such an incredible amount of storytelling. From the pulpit, there's a great amount of storytelling, and there's a great amount of weaving narrative and encouraging people to, use their faith to write their story out in front of them. So all of these things are my experience of the South. And so that's the sound of the South that comes out of me. It's the experience of it anyway. And so some of the beautiful and fun and delicious kind of archetypal parts of the South, the drawl and different things, I missed it because that just isn't what I experienced.
And I think you said that before you did your album Grace, that you made it a purpose to do a road trip through the South. In some ways to remind you of where you were from and think about, I guess, how to express that in your music, and particularly in that particular album. Is that about right?
It was a beautiful experience. Both Grace and Shadow are kind of leaning in the way of saying goodbye to some of my sources, sources of story and spirit and inspiration. And coming into the place of adulthood where you have to figure out how to continue to draw on sources of inspiration, great relationships. My grandmother is such a powerful one, and she's really just the most beautiful human I've known. I think all people feel by their grandparents, but I learned a lot from her, and I became a lot of what I saw in her, and I still seek to. So, acknowledging her in these last 2 records, and also just making sure that people could see some of the landscape that is running through my mind when I close my eyes and I'm singing in front of them. Like I don't know what other singers experience, but I have a very active brain, and I remember words without thinking about them. I don't know where they go in my mind, but I'm really seeing landscape. I'm seeing the long drive to church. I'm seeing fields of, corn and all kinds of stuff, and orchards of, pecan trees and different things. There was one right in front of our house growing up, but also we passed several on the way to church. And my dad preached at a place that was about 40 minutes away from home in Montezuma, Georgia. And so I see some of these sweeping images that I have somehow retained in my head. My friend Jesse Kidd is an amazing photographer from Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, we took a great road trip. We sat down with people. And the great thing about this trip, Kevin, is that I visited the South and the home that I knew, but also the one that I made in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And so I spent time with my neighbor, who was nearly 100, tiny little lady named Vivian. And she plays cards and does puzzles, and we sit in front of her heater and talk about all kinds of stuff from the 30s to yesterday. And so it was her, but it was the life in the South that I was making for myself after returning home, and it was the one that I had come from. So I feel like maybe people have a grasp of all that now, but certainly in the last 2 records I really tried to let them see what they've been hearing.
And I think that's incredibly fascinating to really think about how you have these various influences on your music, and you kind of hear it in your music. You grew up in rural Georgia, but then you went to the big city of Atlanta. You went to Georgia State University. And here, I have to say, I'm a Georgia Southern alum, so we can talk about the different GSUs some other time. But for the sake of this interview, I do want to talk to you a bit about how was it, A, transitioning from rural Georgia life to life in Atlanta, and B, how did that transition influence your music and influence your life and how you think about the South as a region?
Robert, I remember that transition so clearly. I was choosing to go be in downtown Atlanta and go attend Georgia State University because they'd accepted me first. And also because I wanted to be downtown Atlanta, where I knew I could see jazz played live. I'd only heard Marion Partland's piano jazz show on the radio because my father very closely monitored obsessively what we took home. And so we went through long periods in my childhood where the TV was in the closet, like locked up. We would just watch it as a family, like, when it was around the holidays or something, or he wanted to show us something. But my father really took a very commanding hand on what our influences were. And so we spent a lot of time, my siblings and I, just making up games and stories and listening to radio stories and different radio programs. That was our entertainment. And it sounds a bit weird now, and I don't know if my dad would get a phone call from social services if he tried that stuff now, but I'm thankful for it all, because by the time I decided I would go to Atlanta, where I knew I'd see jazz played live, and I knew I could just start with general studies. I wanted to study journalism, actually, funny enough. I went to Atlanta, and I stayed in 5 Points with my mom and my aunt. And I remember, Robert, hearing all the noise of 5 Points around the hotel room and all through the night. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is like Sodom and Gomorrah. I had never seen people outside after dark. Never. Like roaming, talking loud, lights on after dark. At that point, I'd never heard anything outside after sundown but bugs. That was it. Maybe a dog or two. And so I was overwhelmed and so stimulated by the sounds of the city, by all these roaming silhouettes, people who looked so mystical and some of them dark and scary. I just was so overwhelmed, and I asked myself, what are you doing? So there I was out there. My mom believes in me, and she was kind of dropping some of her dreams on my back because she wanted to be a radio broadcaster and I had 3 kids. So she just kind of pushed me out on, a wave of hope that she was even remembering about herself, take me to Atlanta. And she just hoped that I would do well at whatever. So long story short, I get enrolled. I'm taking general courses. There's no jazz vocal program. I am singing classical music. I'm singing Italian arias. I'm very challenged by that, but also intrigued. I'm studying with Dr. Dwight Coleman, and I start sitting at jazz combos just to start to learn standards, just to hold a real book and figure out what it's about. And it's during this period that I'm sitting alone in a basement rehearsal space that's barely larger than the piano sitting in it. And it's an upright piano, and I lay my hands down and just play shapes because I used to do that a lot. And that's where the room where Salt was written. And I feel like that was a place where I kind of got this ancestral message, like, you're going to be okay. Just take this journey of complete unwritten questions, not just questions, unformed questions, but you'll be okay. What's in your heart is what matters. It was kind of like what I was being told. And I really consumed that and walked out on this wisdom that just came to me when I was alone and super uncertain. And it has kept me all these years.
As a musician, as an artist, what I find interesting about your work is you've talked extensively about how much your upbringing and your experience in the South has influenced your work. For example, you've said in the past that you've described your musical sound as, quote unquote, Georgia dirt, stating that there's a sound and there's a treatment of rhythm that's cultural. And you've also said before, quote, I find that we all need the relief of music, end quote. And I think that's so true, especially right now. But could you talk a little bit about what lies behind your philosophy of making music? What characterizes the music you make? A Southern sound. What do you think describes and defines Southern music and the Southern sound you produce in your work?
I would define my take on the Southern sound in music to be just an attempt to give voice to this feeling that I have when I'm around old trees. I love old trees. And my family and I we talk about old trees. We show each other old trees. We're just like this. And this feeling that I get when I hear even the weakest breeze, just flutter through an old tree. It's percussive, it's continuous, it sounds like a string. It's, I don't know. And it's this feeling of peace that is, it's just it's unconditional. It doesn't last, as the sound doesn't last, but the feeling does. And this kind of, there's these little instances of beautiful, small, simple things that make you feel safe in the world, that make the world, in fact, feel quite small. I am remembering these little instances, and I am trying to string them together when I write songs and when I remember what the South is to me. That beautiful lull when you've exchanged a story with somebody on a porch and you just both sit and take it in and let your surrounding atmosphere just have a moment to say its piece, and nobody's saying anything, but everything's happening. It's all of these little instances that are, to me, very cinematic and just very grounding. I don't know. I'm stringing them together in my mind when I'm making things. And so these small, gentle things are my impressions and my little pieces of the South, the little pebbles that I bring when I'm, making a composition.
Well, I'm sorry that journalism lost you, but I'm so glad that you found music because you make incredible music. And mentioning the trees there, this makes me think back to the fact that you have tackled some very emotional Southern issues in your music. You've sung about slavery. And when you mentioned trees, I immediately thought of Strange Fruit and Black Body Swinging. And at the same time, you've incorporated music or done music by Cole Porter. So how have you been able to, or how do you think about melding these two divergent sources of music into what you do?
I think, Kevin, I'm really tracing I'm tracing the Black American experience. You know, it is through time, and it's really interesting how even with tragedy, we have extracted and created and become something really beautiful. And I think this is testament. This is proof. This is, you know, I'm always bearing witness to an enduring kind of beauty that belongs to a people who are essentially lost, you know, historically lost, misplaced, and never put back, and can't go back. And yet they're the kind of souls where, you know, burned and moved and misplaced and dragged and shadowed and buried are still the seeds that are generating so much life as I know it. And I'm very grateful to be among these souls and this culture. You know, I'm really, we are in fact a very massive lost group, but with pieces of, you know, just eternal beauty in our humanity, you know, even deeper than just Blackness. Like these are the gifts of being human and having a soul and being a piece of eternity, you know, each of us, a kernel, if you will. And I think the story of Black America is just an incredible testimony to how beautiful we really are. I mean, all kinds of things have happened. We have, in fact, been in the fire, very much so. We have songs about this and images, and yet we're so much like the things that are crafted, from stone and from earth that hold water, that hold and carry and move light and power. Like that's so much of Black Americans are, you know, this long alchemy just never being overcome, and finding ways to share and be life, no matter what has happened to us. You know, this is a human thing. We just have lived a long narrative that has illustrated in an exceptional way, you know, and I'm really grateful that I get to walk this path, that I hear, you know, these echoes around me, that I can sing Dr. Regan's song, I Remember, I Believe, and have her blessing to sing it, you know, and she can hear Georgia in my voice. She actually told Toshi that I was the only singer who had the sound of home that she hadn't taught. And it was the wildest compliment, you know, to ever get, that I've ever gotten. And so I'm just really thankful. I think Georgia is a spirit and a sound, but certainly I'm just one thread in a great, big, long tapestry of, you know, of what the human spirit really, really is and what it can do. And all of these trials and changes and movements have just revealed that when we really peel all of our layers back, and this is true for all of us, I believe, we really are made of pieces of things that will be around forever in some form or another.
So Dr. Regan and Sweet Honey in the Rock were obviously influences for you. And you talk about this, our lost tribe trying to find its place and all of that. You seem to have put a stake in that path, though, with your own company, Blues and Greens. What was the thought behind that, and how would you like to see that carried forward?
Thank you, Kevin. Blues and Greens stands for a few things. I will say that I have always loved food. I've always felt close to the earth, and I really feel that I've learned, actually, Kevin, as I've approached and come into my 40s, which is so wild to me, that what I really do is nurturing. I really love nurturing. I feel like every day I need to be doing some expression of this, whether it's singing or cooking or gardening, this is what I enjoy. It's like it's a service form, but to me, an art form. It is a constant practice of composition, of timing, of intention. The manifestation is constantly practicing that loop, and it gives me information and inspiration to write songs and to have just a vast reservoir of nuanced colors and emotions to draw from when I'm on stage. So I really love that my father got me into an experience of through the church and his work in the church and his work in the garden, of serving people and being around them. I learned later in life that I needed this cycle again, and that's where all that music came from. People say every song has been written, and it's not. I needed a life that was musical to me, and it was a return to this kind of orbit where I was, in the garden, on the stage, in the kitchen, and back again. And so now I live that with intention, and it's a really joyful path. And I feel the power of good work and of kindness and of vulnerability and of very simple joys when I sing. And I enjoy what I do more and more all the time.
Who are some of the artists who have influenced you in music, in literature, and art over the years who've really helped you shape your own career?
In music, Mahalia Jackson. My father played a lot. Mahalia, she played a lot. He played a lot of Aretha Franklin, but in particular the gospel record. I know every line of that record by heart. By the time I saw the documentary a few years ago, I was absolutely undone because I didn't even know there was any video to that record. The contemporary gospel movement of the 80s and early 90s is my whole life, my whole childhood really. The Hawkins family, the Winans family, Rance Allen, BB and CC. I mean, it just goes on and on. You basically had these subgenres of like blues and soul and rock and roll and jazz, but they were talking about God. So and this was legal for me at the time to listen to, and it really opened up my world. So I had that, and I had Mary McPartland's piano jazz, which somehow jazz got to slide in. I'm so thankful my dad allowed me to listen to that, and classical music. So and I had really great chorus teachers also in middle school and high school. So choral music tradition, visually. There's James Baldwin. There is an visual artist I spent a lot of time with. I think when I moved to Asheville, when I started spending time in Chicago, and also my time in New York, I really felt like visuals were a great way to get into composing and to even take music in that was already in the world. I have to say this, when a visual artist, people who are in fine arts and especially visual arts, when they mix genres and traditions and techniques, it's expected. It can be called eclectic and hybrid, but it's expected. Their markings, whatever they are expected to be signature and expected to be singular. When you make music, you get asked a lot about your influences and traditions, and eclectic just sounds very different. When I'm called eclectic, sometimes I feel like I'm a bit of a mutt and like I have not committed to, I have not fully committed to something. I'm not really sure. It could just be the way that I've always heard the term to describe me, but I will say, taking my cues from visual artists, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to be present without taking bits from here and there. And all the music that I really love is of hybrid nature, truly. Every original thing is some beautiful signature hybrid, so I always wonder why people give me such a hard time. Are you jazz? Are you classical? Are you folk? I'm like, Here's what just walk this way, and here's all the sounds of what I saw along the way. I don't know. Here are the sounds and sights right here in all these songs.
I did not know that you were a chef who has now opened for a number of years a restaurant in Chicago in the Bronzeville neighborhood, historical Black neighborhood that is now being brought back to life. And so I was waiting for you to say, well, the blue part of Blues and Greens is music, and the greens part is specifically collards or mustard greens.
Right.
And that, of course, is a culinary art. So you really are an artist of all corners. So how does how is that important to what you do musically? But I guess you grew up around food. I mean, you've talked about growing up around food and how important it is to you. And how do you bring that into your musical form?
They've always been woven together. My father had a large garden, and he, like his father, had his children work in it. You know, we would sow, we would fertilize, we would water, weed, harvest, and cook, clean fish outside by the spigot, and just go fishing with him. And he just really, he was. He really wanted to make sure we knew how to function in the world and take care of ourselves and live well by those terms, you know, of really taking life in your hands. And I like the way that this feels. I like the rhythm of it. I like the rhythm of handling food and of service and communion. And like I said earlier, I've always had this loop of music and food. And my grandfather also was an incredible gardener. He is just mystical. What he can do with food and how the earth talks back to his hands is just something crazy. It still doesn't make sense to me. His methods, he has like a grade school education, but his collards are like waist high and blue. You know, it's just it doesn't make sense. It's really very interesting. So I think this relationship with the land has always been our way of surviving and knowing a little bit more than other people. It's always given us a kind of edge, you know, where and I love how that brings me into what I'm doing now, because my partner and beloved, Monica, came up with the idea of having a little cafe where I could use the culinary skills that I was bringing to the table and hadn't really activated, but where she could pull in the like truth and racial healing work that she had done with the Kellogg Foundation into her then high school of Little Black Pearl by exposing her students to their neighbors and bonding these people together by the same quality, accessible experience, you know, food. Like, so there's, you know, we also designed the entire menu and kind of the whole ethos of the place and the work culture around Dr. George Washington Carver, you know, whose life and legacy was always embracing a great relationship with the earth, a loving relationship with your neighbors, who, you know, whoever's with you here on the earth, not just Black folks. You know, he really had a tenderness towards everybody that was overwhelming, and that almost, you know, penetrated the reality of where he was and what he, you know, who he was. And he was a household name when it, you know, in his day, because of this beautiful gentleness and this knowledge and this curiosity. And just how accessible he was. And so we really try to build our space and our work culture and our offerings around his legacy. So there's lots of food items that really embrace food in its simplicity, but there's still compositions, juices and smoothies and poached salads, things like that. But the point is just that, you know, people really get to feel this beautiful edge, this beautiful wisdom of having a relationship with the earth and putting it on plate. I really feel like that's what I want people to eat. That's what I want them to hear.
That's beautiful. And I should point out to our listeners and Robert as well on his next visit to Chicago that it's Carver 47 that you've named after the 47 years that George Washington Carver taught at Tuskegee, and you're on the corner of 47th and Greenwood. You are sick.
We're cool.
You are very serious. You ain't serious. I believe that.
My apartment is amazing. That's all her doing. She came up with the name and everything, and I just fill it with biscuits and plants and people. I just operate. Well, I had so many great on the tour that I also got to use with my family and sepia images, and I begged her to let me have a flower stand because I miss New York terribly, and I love how you can buy flowers on a sandwich and no one has to die. You just buy flowers because they look great. And I was like, this has to come to Chicago. I'm going to force this to. Dr. Carver's going to give me license to have a flower stand.
Can I just say for the record that I enjoyed you describing the creation genesis of the cafe in part because you're the first person I've encountered in a long time who mentioned George Washington Carver without having to go to Peanuts. And you've actually really placed his legacy in the proper place of being a great agricultural scientist and someone who was really, like you just said, very much part of the land and learning how to cultivate the land as best as possible on behalf of Black people across the country. So for that alone, I already love this interview. But I do want to go back to Carver 47 for a second, because what you and Monica Haslip created was in some ways a symbol of the latest iteration of the Great Migration, people moving from the South to the North, in this case to Chicago, creating a restaurant, creating another Black space in Chicago. But tell us a bit about some of the food that's served there and how, as you just mentioned a moment ago, it builds off your own Southern heritage.
Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate all of that so much. Well, I'll say first that Monica is originally from Birmingham, Alabama, and I am from Georgia. We realized a little while into our friendship that both our fathers' names were Benny, and they both grew epic gardens and gave food away to neighbors and friends. So very interesting that our fathers never met, at all, and but had so many similarities. And so we just decided to put together a place that embraced a lot of things that we loved. We also wanted, as we talked earlier, to use it to expand the narrative of a Black American icon. So we chose Dr. Carver. We did a lot of research on his life. I'm so thankful for his legacy. I also have been touring Europe for the last 25 years. So European bistro bears a strong influence. I'm always able to find pretty good, clean, inexpensive food in Europe when I'm on tour, and I was really moved by that. So the cafe is a combination of all these influences. Our father being great gardeners, Dr. Carver's legacy, and I love that in the capsule of the cafe, there's such a great cross section of people who otherwise wouldn't really be in the same room together. Ages and interest and information and backgrounds and ideas, being bonded by just really beautiful food in a really beautifully designed environment. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to watch. It feels like I'm part of a long experiment. And I'm really grateful to the neighbors and friends who have really given it a chance.
We can't let you get away without asking you, particularly given everything you've done, what we ask all of our guests. And that is, what to you does the phrase New South mean?
I think about seeds. I think about the seeds that fall out of, of the fruit that comes from, trees and shrubs and plants. And I think about how every generation of seeds brings new adaptations. Every generation of people, exemplify this ability to adapt. They come with new gifts and sensitivities and new wisdom. And I'm excited about what the South is now. I'm excited about how beautiful it was to go to the South myself and take the chance and buy land and plop myself down in the middle of people who didn't have to see or anybody like me in a long time and just love the land with them and be curious about the land with them. And I think about what it means to really be bonded and grouped and rooted together by what we love, even more than what we look like. I found tremendous friendships and I found great inspiration and very different kind of love when I took the chance and just lived out on that land by myself in North Carolina, and spent time with my neighbors and befriended, a 95-year-old and learned what to eat out in the woods in the meadow between us, what was food and what was medicine. And these are generalizations, but I feel that what's really happening is amazing, because my own story might not have been possible some time ago, to just go and buy land. I remember thinking, now's the time to take a chance. Let me just try, worst thing that can happen is I'll go back to the Lord, but I met so many cool people. I took such risk. I stood on porches that I hadn't really been invited to. And then I found a great invitation after I had just shown up. And so much music has come from these encounters with nature and with people. I think this is what the South is now. I think it's already providing its own new narrative and new context and new backdrop. It looks the same, but it's different. Even how the landscape has changed since Hurricane Helene has moved my life, and those are some of the next songs you're going to hear from me. They're already written, and they brought me into even newer and deeper relationships where people that I worked with, that got on with, broke down and were like, I love you. It just dragged the brightest and purest parts of our humanity, those pools that we kind of let a drop in at a time. We release a bit at a time. When tragedy strikes, it can access tremendous tenderness from people. So I think the New South is about how we're adapting and how we're learning to survive. And so I think there's a lot of promise, in these times and in times ahead, because every storm, every overtaking, every hurricane has left behind it a softer and more thoughtful people who need each other and are okay with that.
Fantastic. Thank you.
That's a wonderful answer, and I think a great segue, in fact, to a new feature of the Our New South podcast series. We have a series of rapid fire questions we like to ask our guest, and so we want to hear your thoughts about the following topics. Just give us your answers. And first off, I'll start with, where is your favorite place to be in the South?
Under a tree.
Sweet tea or Arnold Palmer?
Sweet tea.
What's your favorite Southern word or phrase?
I'm gone. I'm going to come back. I'm gone. I'm going to be there.
Who is your favorite Southerner, living or dead?
My grandfather, Ronnie Gray.
Big Daddy.
Big Daddy. Mm-hmm.
Perhaps the most controversial question you'll get this entire interview. What do you believe is the most underrated Southern food?
Southern food. Okay. The honeysuckle. It's not even like a food, but it is like this. It's really interesting how it's a song, it's an idea. But I was taking a walk with Terry Lynn Carrington recently in DC, of all places. I don't even remember what the gig was, but it was like either the next morning or morning of the gig, and she was getting her steps in and said, "Hey, do you want to join me?" I said, "Yeah, I'm at this coffee shop." So I started walking with her, and I saw this beautiful bush we were passing, covered in honeysuckles, and I was like, "Dude, have you ever tasted a honeysuckle?" And she was like, "What?" I was like, "No, it's like, you know about honeysuckles, right?" She's like, "Well, yeah, I've heard about them, but I've never tasted honeysuckle." I'm like, You've never pulled the piston or I forget the name of the part of the flower at the moment where I should know this, actually. I have forgotten. But you just pop it gently and you pull it back and you extract it until at the back of the trumpet of the flower and right at the ball of this, I think, piston or whatever it's called, a little dewdrop forms, and then you just eat that, and it is so beautiful. And it's like It looks like rain, and it's sweet, and that's actually tasting a honeysuckle.
That's a fantastic answer. I hadn't thought about that. Well, Lizz Wright, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Thank you.
You know what I'm saying? It's like we got a demo tape and don't nobody want to hear it, but it's like this is South got something to say.
Our New South is presented by Levine Museum of the New South. Levine Museum connects the past to the future to realize the promises of a New South. To learn more and donate to projects like this, visit museumofthenewsouth.org.
Our New South is produced by Next Chapter Podcast. Thanks to our audio editor, sound designer, and composer Cal Murdoch, video editor Justin Cortez, producers Brian Douglas, Alexander Pineras, and Cliff Whitfield, senior producer and writer Byron Hunter, and executive producers Jeremiah Tittle and Frankie Abbott. Please follow the show, subscribe, rate and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and watch portions of our interviews on YouTube.
Go to youtube.com and search Levine Museum.
Learn more at nextchapterpodcast.com/Our New South.
South got something to say.
Thanks for listening.